Welcome, everyone, to the May 21st edition of the Signals from Mars live stream brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast. My name is Victor, your host, and this week we have an extremely special event. This is a patron live stream, so everyone that you'll see here are all patrons of mine on Patreon. And Jeremy from the UK keeps bouncing in and out. Let's see if we can get him on the show before it's all done here. So in any event, let me go around the horn here. We have, a lot of you know, Mr. Brad Dahl from Yarg Metal. A few weeks ago, it was last week, right? That we had Steve Hoker on? No, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, last week we had Sumo Psycho. And then on top here is the metal dentist, Mr. Gabriel Ruiz. We have 75% of the show is at least comes from New Jersey.
We have good taste.
So, but before we get on with the festivities, I must apologize. I posted the interview for Sumo Psycho today, and I spelled Sky's name wrong on like half of the stuff that I sent out, including graphics and everything else. I knew how to spell her name. I knew that her name had an E at the end, but for some reason I didn't include it. So I don't know why. So my apologies. I have tried to rectify that. So anyway, the idea behind tonight's show is to talk a little Iron Maiden, a band that some of us enjoy, some of us just kind of like. But if nothing else, there we go. Brad is flashing killers already. He told me he was going to be ready with his CDs.
I feel left out.
But yeah, we'll have to do There's Number of the Beast. Let's see.
I got a coaster.
There you go. Peace of mind. See, all my stuff is in the next room over. I don't think I want to start running out. The show wouldn't end. But anyway, Brad, since you started showing off some of your wares there, first off, when did you get into Maiden? Do you remember what song got you hooked on Iron Maiden, or maybe the first thing that you heard by them?
Yeah, totally. Hopefully, does sound okay?
Yeah, sounds fine.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was this. Of course, it wasn't on DVD when I first got it. It was on vinyl, which is since long gone because during one of our moves, my wife made me get rid of all my vinyl.
Oh no.
Yeah, that happens. It's okay. There's days when you go, oh man. And yeah, but anyway. So yeah, the interesting thing was, I remember I was in a record store and I think it was a magazine, one of the rock magazines, and there was an ad in there, which I think was brilliant for the management to be doing this kind of stuff, because obviously they're not going to play them on the radio or anything in the
right.
U.S. There was an ad for this album, and and it was the album cover, and I remember looking at it thinking, what the hell is this? Like, well, it's metal, right? And,
right.
Yeah, back then there wasn't like a whole huge amount of metal around, so I thought, well, it's worth looking into. They did have the album, so I bought it. I hadn't heard anything off it. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Right.
Dropped the needle on it, and Ides of March, going right into Wrathchild.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy crap, what is this? This is incredible. I mean, I'd never heard anything like this. To me, they really broke brand new ground. I mean, there was nothing, there was nobody that sounded like that. It was not like they were, I mean, obviously they're standing on the shoulders of other rock bands, but they really were their own thing. And just the speed of it it's funny because you think now it's like, well, it's not really that crazy, but
Right.
back then the speed of it was unbelievable. I mean, I
Mhm.
tried playing along with Wrathchild. I play bass, and I made it through maybe about 2 minutes, and I had to stop because my hands were just like, I can't do this. They were so tired, and yeah, it was just incredible. So that's my first album, and I truly do love that album. Love every song on it, and yeah. In fact, I was just looking through this, trying to think of what my favorite album was. I think we're going to get there with that, right? But that one, I don't think there's really a spot on there that's like, I mean,
Right.
yeah. It is solid, and I actually got to see them on tour promoting that album. They were warming up for UFO.
Huh.
And it was this is the first tour that UFO did without Michael Schenker of the US.
Okay.
Full tour. Anyway, it was
Mhm.
after No Place to Run. And so they were headlining the Long Beach Sports Arena, which is kind of funny. All the time with Schenker, they never headlined anywhere in Southern California other than a club. And so
Right.
here they are headlining the Long Beach Sports Arena, which is, probably 12,000+ people. But Iron Maiden was the warm-up band, and they were just fantastic. I mean, they just blew it out, and yeah, they had me. So I was all in on that, and then of course the next thing you know, well, the singer's gone. Like, oh, great, now what?
Right.
Yeah, but then we all know what happened. So that's my introduction to Maiden.
Okay.
I've been on the ride for the whole way. I've kind of drifted a little bit, during the mid 80s.
Mhm.
I still bought the CDs, but wasn't quite as passionate about
Okay.
some of the stuff then. Certainly came back really strong when Bruce came back into the band. So there you go.
Okay. For me, Killers, by the way, this is going back to the old vinyl and cassette. To me, side B is like the perfect album side. It is a perfect album side from Killers all the way to Drifter. And I believe you posted something for Yarg Metal about Iron Maiden, and you said something about like deeper cuts, and I instantly commented on Drifter and
Right.
Sea of Madness. To me, Drifter, I can still remember that I heard the live version of that first before I heard the studio version, but that was because the place and time where I was as a kid, where, and Gabriel can attest to this, we couldn't afford everything, so we taped a lot of things and borrowed this from a friend and that from another friend, and we would have our trips to Steve up to what was the name of the music shop in the Ledgewood Mall that had the imports?
Soundorama.
Soundorama. Yeah. We would go up there and we would get the British singles. And I remember that was the big deal. We had to get all the singles. So I forget what single actually had Drifter. I mean, I could look it up on my computer, but Drifter Live was a B-side. It was that, and it was I've Got the Fire, which is a Montrose cover. And I remember just hearing that and hearing Paul Di'Anno live, and I was like, wow, this is so awesome. And once I finally got to hear that entire album side of Killers, I was like, I've loved Kiss for so long, but these guys are, and I'll continue to say it, to me, I have a 1A and a 1B as favorite bands ever, and it's Kiss and it's Iron Maiden, because they've meant so much to me over the years. But favorite album, what would you say is your favorite album?
Me?
Yes.
Oh man, that is so tough. And it's funny because I wanted to say Peace of Mind, because for some reason that I remember when I got it, I just thought, oh, this album, it sounds great.
Right.
Yeah, just the intro. It was the first one with Nico, right?
Yeah, Nico's intro to Where Eagles Dare.
Where Eagles Dare. I mean, Revelations, Flight of Icarus. Oh, Die With Your Boots On. That's one of my all-time favorite songs right there. Yeah, I guess I am going to stick with this album.
Okay.
I kind of feel a little bit like Quest for Fire, Sun and Steel, and To Tame a Land kind of kind of was a soft landing there at the end of the album. I think the best of it goes all the way through Still Life, which I love Still Life.
Yeah, Still Life is a great
yeah,
song.
Everything through Still Life is just like top shelf Iron Maiden stuff. After that, it was kind of like, yeah, okay, it was good, but it wasn't like, oh, I hope they play that. Yeah. So then anyway, I flip-flopped to Power Slave just because stupid light. Anyway, Power Slave because of that tour. That tour was just incredible.
Right.
And I lucked out because I just moved here to Utah, and when they were selling tickets, we got up, in the middle of the night, went down to the Salt Palace, which is no longer there, and for to buy tickets, me and a buddy of mine. And so what they did was they had everybody kind of lined up, and then they went through and they handed us strips of paper that had a number on it. And so they said, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to call out your number. And if you get, when you get called out, then you come in. So they were trying to, keep people from spending the night there. It's like, well, there's no benefit to being here, overnight, because you're not going to be the first one in line. There's no first in line. There's only the last in line. Sorry about that. So there's this kid, this just rock kid that was standing next to us, and he was from about an hour north of Salt Lake, from Ogden, and a really cool, nice kid. And I told him, I made a deal with him. I said, look, whoever gets the number first, okay, because we only want 2 tickets. How many? You only want 2 tickets, and they are only allowing you to buy 4. So I said, whoever gets their number drawn first between me and my buddy and you, I said, you'll buy 4 tickets and you'll give us 2, or we'll buy 4 tickets and give you 2. Fortunately enough, I was one of the first one picked. I was like in the top 20 people. So I'm thinking, oh, front row, right? No. Yeah, it was 4th row. It's like, well, where did all the first 3 rows go? Yeah, of course we know, the way they did tickets back then. They kept those for special people. They didn't sell them to the public. But so I bought 4 tickets. And I'm sorry about if I'm going to try to go through the story really quick, but it's a great story. So I bought 4 tickets, gave 2 to this guy, and then we had the other 2. We go to the concert, and we're there, and this kid is such a passionate Maiden fan. He made a big Iron Maiden poster. Well, the warm-up band on this tour was Twisted Sister.
Oh.
So Twisted
Sister. Now
I'm listening. Yeah, so Twisted Sister, it gets better. They're out there doing their thing, and this kid is just so like pumped up. He's holding his Iron Maiden poster that he made, and all of a sudden, Dee Snider just loses it. He's just like, "Okay, I'm getting tired of looking at this guy, the Iron Maiden poster." He goes, "Yeah, we love Iron Maiden and everything, but we're up here on stage, and you're disrespecting us." And he was going on, and then he says, "Okay," he says, "all you Twisted Sister fans, I think you need to kick this guy's ass." And it's funny because I remember this guy behind us leaned over and he goes, "Oh, I think you better put that poster down." And I said, "Screw that, man. It's like, this isn't a diss to them. It's just this kid is so pumped up about Iron Maiden." So then Dee was like, "Well, I'm going to come down in the audience then, and I'm going to punch him out." And of course, and so we're all like going, come on down here, Dee, let's go. And he didn't. So that was the end of that. But then Maiden came on, and it was just unbelievable show. So, and that's well documented in Live After Death CD, which was recorded at the Long Beach Sports Arena. So full circle, I'm done.
Awesome story. I knew that once you said Twisted Sister, you were going to pique Mr. Hoker's interest there. I want to send a shout out to Rob Rowe in the chat and to Jose in the chat. Usually, most of the people that are on the show with me tonight are in the chat as well. So you guys are the guys holding down the fort in there. Thank you for tuning in as usual. I appreciate you guys hanging out and chatting with us. Jose is saying that Iron Maiden was almost contraband for us in my small Catholic school growing up. Yes, I remember wearing the Number of the Beast single, I had a not a badge. What are they called?
A pledge pin
A button. No,
on
a
your
button.
uniform.
No, Mr. Snyder. And I wasn't
Girl
spitting
Scouts.
full blast while saying it. But I wore that. I wore that to church once, and all of a sudden, my brother goes, "Hey, you need to take that off. We're going to church." And he was trying to get me in trouble with my folks because I was wearing, essentially a pin with Eddie holding the devil's head in his hand.
Wouldn't you think that's a good thing for church?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was showing where my allegiance lied.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you, God. It's cool.
Rob is saying I went to get Metallica tickets during the Black Album. People in the front row got us front row. People in front of us got us front row. We got 8th, and bastards didn't even show up. Anyway, still great seats and a fun show. Yeah, that's got to blow. But anyway, we're gonna hop over to the other side of the world. Mr. Jeremy Weltman up in the UK. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Doing well. Obviously, you're talking about history and royalty practically in the UK with Iron Maiden. I mean, you have to think that out of all the bands that have come out of England, I mean, there have been a lot, but you'd have to think that Maiden for hard rock and metal is up there with Sabbath and Priest and maybe Zeppelin and perhaps Deep Purple. I mean, I don't think you could really throw any other bands up there with them if you think of the influence. Living through all that from the inside, from the UK, what was it like to see Maiden kind of rise through the ranks?
Yeah, it was quite interesting because I don't know if you sort of remember that far back, but Iron Maiden weren't actually that massive when they first came out. You got to remember that Judas Priest were already several albums in. Iron Maiden, the original album came out. It actually came out on the day before my birthday, on the 14th of April, 1980. Wow. The first album, and that was the same day that British Steel came out, I think.
Right.
So, and April 1980, there were quite a few albums that came out. You had Heaven and Hell that came out in the same month. Later on in the month, earlier in the month, you had Saxon's Wheels of Steel. So, we were living through times where there was a lot of metal being thrown at you from all. But this is an interesting band. But they weren't the only band in town at the time, and it took a little time to sort of get to know the songs. But as soon as I personally heard "Running Free," which was one of the singles, I thought this band is I like this. This is quite interesting. But I was listening to Wheels of Steel at the same time. I was listening to Living After Midnight and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of music all happening at the same time. But the thing about Iron Maiden was that they had the logo. They had Eddie, the mascot. So they had the whole image all at the same time, which all helped. And of course, they were touring constantly. This is a band that were in the music papers. I used to get Sounds. I used to get Kerrang, which you know about. But Sounds was a newspaper which was very like the NME and Melody Maker. I used to get that on a Thursday, and you'd read about these sort of bands. Iron Maiden were quite well talked about at the time because they were touring a lot. So they were starting to make a name for themselves. And then obviously the first album came out, and your friends were passing around the albums and the singles, and you were starting to get into that. Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both you and Brad brought up interesting points. I think Iron Maiden changed not only how bands were playing music, but the album covers. I mean, Eddie, the logo. I mean, sure, Priest had that consistent logo, but they didn't have Eddie. They didn't have something like that instantly. There was a character that, your concert t-shirts were going to have it, the posters, all this stuff. And I remember about a month ago, I believe may have been the anniversary of Number of the Beast coming out, and Charlie Benante mentioned on social media, this was the album that kind of changed everything for us and kind of helped bring upon thrash metal. And there were, younger kids saying, no, that brought about power metal, not thrash metal. And much to Brad's point, maybe power metal got stuff from it later, the anthemic side of it, but Maiden was fast, where sure Motorhead was fast, but not, I don't think that they had stuff like I'm trying to think of Twilight Zone off of Killers. I mean, that was such a fast, like 2-minute song. You're talking about Run to the Hills. You're talking about Transylvania. The beginning, the riff of that, was something unheard of at the time. It was just so out there.
Just sorry to interrupt. If you think at the time, punk was really going at the time as well, and Iron Maiden was that link between punk and metal. And a lot of my friends were into punk, and they heard this band Iron Maiden, and they wanted something a bit different. And I think Iron Maiden just gave you that it was that leap over into something a bit different at the time. And that first album is quite punky, isn't it? If you listen back to it.
Yeah, I know that they don't like hearing that now because they don't like being associated with what the punk scene was like. But definitely, I agree with what you're saying. And much to the point of thrash, how thrash was kind of similar, where there were a lot of bands that crossed over with punk, with hardcore, with different things like a Suicidal Tendencies or a DRI, or even, if you think of Anthrax, they were really bringing in elements that some of the other bands weren't either. To answer Jose in the chat, the original artist was Derek Riggs, who did all of the Iron Maiden covers up until Fear of the Dark. And then after Fear of the Dark, they had whatever Falling Out, and that was that. I mean, he's worked with other bands since, but I mean, Maiden is obviously his claim to fame. There you go. Brad's holding up Fear of the Dark. Jeremy, what is your favorite Maiden album?
Now that was interesting because I've been thinking about this all week, and I've been tossing different albums backwards and forwards because it's really, really hard to pick your favorite. I mean, I've mentioned the first album. I've obviously got love for the first album. I like Peace of Mind. I like Matter of Life and Death. I like, you can go on and on. Seventh Son is another one. Power Slave, I was listening to in the car today. But I think, to be honest, I'm going to pick Number of the Beast. And there's a reason, because obviously it was 1982. It was the first one with Bruce. And it was a big change. I think Iron Maiden needed an album like that, and obviously it was a very important album here in the UK, but around the world as well. It was, a massive seller. I think it went to number 1 here in the UK, probably did around the world as well. And it just really changed the band. I think it was, it had some killer tracks on. There's one dodgy song on, which I think we all know which one that is. But the rest of the album is really great. It's not to say that other albums are not great. I like a lot of other albums, but I'd pick that one.
Do you think Total Eclipse should have been on there instead of Ganglands?
Yeah, well, you could have put many of their songs on there instead of that one. But I mean, how many bands have released albums, and you think, that's a fantastic album, but there's always one track that's, a filler track, what they used to call a filler track on a vinyl. There'd always be there. What can you do? It's there now, and you don't remember that song. You just remember your favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. In your opinion, what are your 3 tracks that you enjoy the most off of this that make this your favorite album?
Well, that was hard as well. But initially, I went for Run to the Hills.
Okay.
So that's the first one. I think it was a single, and it was something that was into at the time. Bought as a single as well, because you got to remember in those days we bought singles, not albums as well.
Right.
So we were always buying singles first, and then if you could afford it, you buy the album afterwards. Obviously, the title track, "Number of the Beast," that's brilliant. It was just an amazing song at the time, and it's sort of, I don't know, it's just sort of the song that you wouldn't play your grandma. It was the song that you owned as a metal fan. You own that song. You're not going to play it to.
Which song would you play your grandma off of here? Hallelujah, I name.
Well, that's true actually. Yeah, I played my grandma's from Rainbow, but maybe not Iron Maiden. Yeah. I'd also say I was sort of in between. I think "Children of the Damned," I would say, is one of my favorites off the album. And so maybe those three really.
Okay, cool.
You have to throw "The Prisoner" in there. Okay, I'm out.
Yeah. Let's go to Mr. Steve Hoker, who has kind of the same opinion. We've been talking about this earlier in the week because I was trying to coax him to come on. You're the person that I alluded to initially, that you like Maiden, but you're not a huge fan like probably the rest of us are with Maiden. Can you remember hearing them for the first time?
I can, actually.
Okay.
My brother was the one that was still is the Maiden fan, but Number of the Beast was the album that I first heard. And so that was 82, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I was 7. My brother was 15, 16, somewhere around there. So he was right in his teenage angst years. I just remember he had like the Number of the Beast, like the blacklight, like felt poster.
Yeah.
Had that hanging up. So that's like drilled in my head because, as a little kid, it was kind of scary, but at the same time, it was pretty cool.
Right.
And so I just remember our rooms were next to each other. So I just got to hear Maiden whether I wanted to or not. But so that's where I got most of my metal from. And my sister upstairs from us was listening to disco and stuff. So that's probably where I get my weird like pop metal love.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's my first memory of Iron Maiden.
Okay. And you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you're saying that, or you told me that you're more or less kind of leaning towards what Jeremy said, in that Number of the Beast, the first time that you heard, is probably your favorite out of the lot by the band.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my favorite song. That and Run to the Hills are probably my two favorite songs from Iron Maiden.
Okay. Where, if you had to pick a third off of that album, where would you go?
You know what I said.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. It was a toss-up between The Prisoner and Gangland.
That's fine. Hey, this is all a matter of opinion. So, and again,
I guess I like When Murder's Up for Sale. Yeah.
There you go.
I support that, man. Good job.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll have to do a Twisted Sister episode in the future, just so
that one I can have a little more information for.
That one, I'm sure we'll have to stop you instead. It'll be it'll be like Megadeth playing Paranoid, where Dave Mustaine is yelling out to Nick Menza.
Nick.
Yeah. So you got it. I was going to say keeping things in New Jersey. I was going to say keeping things in Morris County, but you're no longer in Morris County.
Traitor.
Well, three of us are originally from Morris County, as well as from New Jersey. We've probably rubbed elbows with Steve at some point, but
I know if he's gone to Starland, I know I've seen probably been there next to him drinking a beer, watching a show. I live right next to Starland.
Okay. Well, I'm jealous of that.
Yeah. It's easy. It's a great thing because most of my friends are up in Morris County. So I go up there for events and this and that, and then I got to come home at 2:00 in the morning, and it's late. When they come down to Starland to watch a show, they complain about having to drive back to Morris County, and I'm just 5 minutes away. It's the most beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. So, Iron Maiden, your all-time favorite band. I can say this with certainty. It's not going to be the Teletubbies.
No.
And Jose is saying in the chat that he's the fourth one from Morris County as well.
True.
That is true. We have a fourth thing. Steve, what hospital were you born in?
I was born in St. Barnabas.
Okay.
That's where my son was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was going to see if we were all born in the same hospital, but we weren't.
No.
I guess technically I'm originally from Union.
Well,
okay.
Or Union County, so.
Yeah.
All right. So, Iron Maiden.
Yes.
When was the first time that you heard Iron Maiden?
At your house.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I could tell you the story how I came across my first album with Iron Maiden.
Let's hear it. Let's go.
So as many of us know, obviously not for Jeremy and unfortunately for Brad, but in Morris County, there's a supermarket that's no longer there. It was called Pathmark. And I remember when I was a kid, and a person in this chat, in this video chat that shall remain nameless, the host, basically started getting me into heavy metal. And I wasn't allowed to listen to stuff like Michael Jackson and things like that at the time when we were kids in his house. So I got used to heavy metal. And I remember going to the supermarket with my parents, and they had a little record section. And I picked out 2 albums. I picked out Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time. And it was my first 2 ever vinyl, ever metal albums. And the other one's not a metal. It's more hair metal. It was Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. And I brought them to my mother, and I said, "Oh, Mom, I'd like to buy these." And she looked at a bunch of chicks on one album. She's like, "You're not taking that one home." And she let me take home Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time. And I remember putting it on my father's record player, which was at the time, if you remember, these gigantic things that like took up half a room, like the size of a TV. You lifted a door and you went in there and you played a record. And I was listening to that. Sorry for my kid in the background, but so I remember falling in love with Somewhere in Time, not only just because it was my first album, but and it's funny because Jose in the chat mentioned who's the artist. I fell in love with Derek Riggs. His art. If you look at that Somewhere in Time album, you see little nuances of all their previous albums within the cover, which is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. You see all sorts of other things from their songs, and I don't think I can even. I'm sure Victor knows them all because he's the trivia guy in the room and in our family in terms of metal for sure. But I did see, in terms of the album, when you look at the album, you see a different thing every time. And then what I liked most about the artwork of the album, if you open the inner sleeve and you pull out the inner sleeve, it was a futuristic. It was a completely different thing. Like the other, in terms of, you saw these futuristic blue cars that they were sitting on, and the whole band. And so I'll be honest with you, I fell initially in love with the artwork on the album, and then the music just came secondary to me. But then it became obviously a primary thing. And then I've as Victor can tell you, I've had a fascination with Iron Maiden since then. In fact, when much of my life after school, I took about 5 years out of my life to study dentistry, and I really basically locked myself in a room for 5 years, and it was in a hospital in a clinic, and I didn't get a chance to really enjoy much. But Iron Maiden was always there, and I, even though I did have other phases and other musics, I never ever left Iron Maiden. And then the funny thing is that when I graduated school and I got my first job, my first paycheck, Iron Maiden came to town. I bought 30 tickets to Iron Maiden, and I took 30 of my friends to go see Iron Maiden. And I remember it was at PNC Arts Center, and it was pouring so much that literally you couldn't stand on the lawn. Everybody was slipping down the lawn all the way down to the upper portion of the seats. But we were so muddy. People lost their phones, their keys. It was a mess, but to me, it was one of the best times.
Cool. So Somewhere in Time is your favorite Maiden album then? First introduction?
Listen, I honestly that when you got in touch with me last week or a couple weeks about this and said you have to pick for me it's the hardest thing. I even like Future Real. And I know many Iron Maiden people will not consider that an Iron Maiden album, but I like most of their stuff. To me, the one thing about Iron Maiden also is no matter what album you get, and I'm sure we've all had this, not with all bands, but with some bands, you hear a song on the radio, you go buy it, and that's the only best song they have. And then you're like, oh, what a bummer. But then Iron Maiden, almost every album has at least 50% of the songs, maybe 60, 70% of the songs, I would say, are fantastic songs. And you always remember them. If you're an Iron Maiden fan, they stick with you. And, I think it's fantastic. Now, Somewhere in Time, I'll have to choose. If I have to choose Somewhere in Time because it's my first album, I still pull out the vinyl and stare at the vinyl periodically. And, I enjoy the album. And I'm just going to have to choose that. But if I have a hard time choosing a specific album, but I guess it would be Somewhere in Time.
Okay, 3 songs off of that to sell your case for Iron Maiden or for Somewhere in Time, Maiden album.
Somewhere in Time, when you turn that on and it starts with that intro, I instantly fell in love with that intro. I was hooked from day one when that song for Somewhere in Time. So Somewhere in Time is going to be my number 1 on that song. Number 2 is, as you know, Victor, Wasted Years was one of my entry songs for my wedding. So we all my bridal party came into Wasted Years, and the third one is it's hard. I mean, I love Alexander the Great, because Victor knows I'm a fan of super long, epic songs. So to me, Alexander the Great was also I mean, I love every song on there, but I guess if I had to choose my third one, it'd be Alexander the Great.
Okay, I can give you a story on. Somewhere on the track called Somewhere in Time. I remember being in Madrid the first time, driving from where we are here in the north, driving to Madrid. My wife convinced me that we were going to take her car because we always use my car to drive around everywhere. What I didn't know was that it was going to be over 100 degrees and her car didn't have air conditioning while my car did. As I roll the windows down, we're sitting in traffic over, Jeremy, it was over 40 Celsius. So we're sitting there and all I hear the opening chords to Somewhere in Time. And I'm like, my instant reaction was, holy shit, it's Iron Maiden and it's Caught Somewhere in Time, which never got played on the radio in the US.
Never.
And
you were thinking, I think I have heat stroke.
What's wrong with you? What's the big deal? I'm like, it's Iron Maiden. It's Caught Somewhere in Time. The kicker, the song after that was an Ace Frehley solo song. Was the next song after that? I'm like, all right, we're listening to this station the entire time we're here.
Yeah.
It was great. I was thinking about playing this. I'm gonna play this. This is a sound clip before I yammer off on how I got into Iron Maiden. This is Gene Hoglan. I'm assuming all you guys know who Gene Hoglan, the drummer, is. Okay, this is Gene Hoglan telling me candidly how he got into Iron Maiden. And this actually, no, this has to do more with how he met James Hetfield and how Iron Maiden is what got him to actually speak to James Hetfield for the first time. So let me cue this up.
The album was...
Okay, let me... All right. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Released on August June 27th, 1981.
Can you guys hear that?
Was ironically a Saturday, and that was also the same day I met James Hetfield for the first time. And I got to tell this story to James when we were on tour with Metallica last year. They all took us out to dinner and, got to know us a little bit. And I got to tell James, hey, man, I met you in 1981. And I got to tell him the story. And he was howling at the story. And I just thought it was kind of funny that, this great metal day, I got to be in Metallica. And this is before he was in Metallica. Like I saw him at a backyard party, and we had a mutual friend named Caton DePenna, who now sings for the band Hyrax. He was in his band. I think they were called Chaos at the time, and they were just kind of a cover band doing like UFO and cool Scorpion songs and like cool metal cover band.
Right.
But I saw this guy walking around the party wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt, and I didn't know anybody who knew who Iron Maiden was, let alone walking around in an Iron Maiden shirt. And it was it was a black shirt. It was the first album, but it was all in white. So, I ran up to this dude and I was like, oh my God. I was 13 years old. Ozzy had played the week before with Motorhead. And, I was wearing my Ozzy shirt, and, I was a 13-year-old little punk who was just like, oh my God, please, where did you get that shirt? I made it. Can you make me a shirt? No. Here's $10, which, no t-shirts were on sale for $10 at the time. Here's $10. Could you make me one, please? I've never seen anybody with an Iron Maiden shirt. Please. No. And I just bothered this guy for the entire party. Please, I went to my sister and got $10 from her. Here's $20. Will you please make me one? I'll never see an Iron Maiden shirt ever. Because they only had Killers out at the time, maybe. And, nobody knew who Iron Maiden was. And, that's whatever. So anyway, 6 months later, I go to see Saxon at the Whiskey. And it's their first show in America, and I walk in right as the opening band is going on stage, and sure enough.
Mind you, Brad Dahl has told us that he was at this very same show as well in one of his previous appearances. So Brad and Gene Hoglan may have been rubbing elbows without even knowing it. So
true story. Yeah.
All right. Let's continue to hear there's just a little bit more of this story.
It's that guy. Hey, that's the dude that wouldn't make me the Iron Maiden shirt. And sure enough, the band was Metallica. And actually, they weren't very good. But hey, that's the fucker that wouldn't make me the Iron Maiden. And I got straight about that. 30 years later, and it was pretty. And he thought it was pretty cute. But yeah, there you go. But and just ironically, I was reading on Motorhead's Wikipedia page that Ace of Escape got released on the same day that I actually met James Hetfield. So that was pretty fun little metal coincidence there. But anyway, yeah, Ace of Spades, can't beat it. I mean, hell, that song is metal, and the fact.
All right, so he brings up Ace of Spades because we were talking about Ace of Spades is what we were supposed to be talking about, but that rang a bell, and he started talking about meeting James Hetfield. So that's one of my favorite all-time stories. So go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I got to jump in here because I think this speaks to the importance of Iron Maiden and my earlier statement about nobody had ever done music like this before. I'm gonna throw this out there that without Iron Maiden you wouldn't have Metallica, and because that night that Gene and I were in the Whiskey together somehow, which is awesome. When those guys hit the stage, I mean, he's right. I keep thinking, was I wrong about this? Were they not really that good? Was I just like, a hater or something? But anyway, they weren't that good. But I looked at these guys and I said, these kids are trying to be Iron Maiden. I mean, they really were. I mean, everything was really fast and there were licks, and that the only one song I can actually remember that was memorable that they played was Metal Militia. That's I think off the first album, right?
Right.
I don't know that many of the other songs they played ended up on an album, but anyway, I'm going to tell you that without Iron Maiden, you wouldn't have Metallica, which are arguably the biggest heavy metal band really in the world now, anyway. And you probably wouldn't have Anthrax either, because I think they pretty much wore it on their sleeves. I mean, think of the song Indians. Okay, I mean, doggone well, it's like, okay, Run to the Hills. We got to have our own Run to the Hills, and that's exactly what that is. I mean, you wouldn't have Anthrax without Iron Maiden. You wouldn't have probably a lot of other bands without Iron Maiden.
Right.
So there. I rest my case, Your Honor.
Yeah. Jeremy, go ahead.
Just a small story from the UK, because you guys won't be aware of this, but we used to have a program on Thursday nights called Top of the Pops. And they used to have a range of music on, all the hits. And Iron Maiden came on there, and obviously you'd have Judas Priest on there as well, and you'd have Saxon and other bands. But Iron Maiden were the only band that ever played live on it. Ever. I mean, every other band mimed, but Iron Maiden brought their amps. They played live, and it didn't sound quite as good as the other stuff, but they made a point of the fact that they were playing live, in the studio, and it was amazing, really, to see that. We were all talking about it as kids. The only band to ever play live on TV.
Cool.
I have another question about that, Jeremy, and I feel like it was Iron Maiden, but maybe it was another a band that was on top, and I think it was Top of the Pops, where they made him lip sync, and so they made a mockery of it, and they started switching instruments and really screwing around during the song. Was it Iron Maiden that did that, or was it somebody else? You remember that?
Yes,
that sounds familiar.
That was Maiden. That was Maiden, but that was in Germany. It wasn't in the UK.
Okay.
Because
I wasn't sure about it.
I get those two countries mixed up.
both incidents are in the original 12 Wasted Years, which we practically wore out on VHS back in the day. And now that appears, I think, as like the bonus disc on Live After Death, maybe, where they talk about that. I'll say this, that they've talked about never lip syncing on shows, but when they have the New Year's celebration here every year, they have like this almost like pop-up video that they used to have on VH1, where they'll show bands playing on TV, and they'll have like different like comedic comments going along with it, and they always have like the token metal bands that they show, and it's usually Ramones and like a few Spanish bands. And this year they showed Iron Maiden, who was completely doing everything in playback, lip syncing to Flight of Icarus. So it was interesting, because in 12 Wasted Years they say we never lip sync anywhere, and I saw that, I'm like, they fucking liars, they did it on national TV here. They probably had no other choice. But all right, so how I got into Iron Maiden. This was 1983. I remember being in third grade, and someone by the name of Kim Gladish. Kim Gladish begged me to come to my birthday party. And she said, I promise I'll buy you something that you'll love. Okay. And she bought me, and this is how we kind of gatewayed into a lot of bands back in the 80s. It was a K-Tel vinyl. Okay. And it was called Masters of Metal. Masters of Metal started out with Black Sabbath's Trashed, had Zebra's Who's Behind the Door, I believe. You Can't Stop Rock and Roll by Twisted Sister, Kisses Lick It Up, Street of Dreams by Rainbow, Crocus Screaming in the Night, Van Halen Dancing in the Streets, and I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. Oh, Triumph. It may have been Fight the Good Fight. I don't remember. But anyway, the second song on side 2 was Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. And I remember that I loved the song so much that I'd flip the album over and I wouldn't even bother playing Street of Dreams by Rainbow. I would just start side 2 off with Run to the Hills. And that instantly started with my love affair with the band. And it's funny because I have one of the sound things that I have in the sound bank that I always have is the next kind of progression here, because I came to Spain, and this was probably like 87, 88. Again, along the lines of what we're talking about, that we couldn't afford stuff, so we kind of recorded stuff off of one another. I'm not sure. Yeah, Gabriel had Somewhere in Time already, but I didn't own an actual Iron Maiden album. And I remember we were going on a bus trip, and this kid comes up to me and says, "You know English. Can you translate this for me?" And this is what I have saved.
And the moral of this story is this is what not to do if your bird shits on you.
Which is the intro to Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner on Live After Death. And I had to translate it for the kid with his parents and a priest looking at me saying, he's saying, it's a good thing to kind of like learn from. And then later on, I told him, I said, hey, he's actually saying, this is what not to do when a bird shits on you. So I remember getting back from that trip, from that hike, which was like a 3-day excursion. And the first thing I did was head into the city and get Live After Death and Peace of Mind on cassette. And I was done. It was Iron Maiden. Like from that point on, there was like nothing else that could touch Iron Maiden for a very long time. It got to the point from the late 80s up until after the X Factor, where I kind of had to lay off Maiden for a few years because I just couldn't. I listened to them so much that I'd burned myself out on them. But luckily, I came back, and I will say that I still followed Bruce's solo stuff, which I still think, and I know this is going to be sacrilegious to some people, I think Bruce's solo stuff is better than anything he's done since he's come back to the band, except for maybe Brave New World. So, but that's my funky taste in music, which leads me to my favorite Iron Maiden album. I love Killers. I love Brave New World. I love Power Slave a lot too. But my all-time favorite Iron Maiden album, and I can still remember seeing the album cover for the first time because, again, the album covers were so iconic. There was someone by the name of Aggie Pagalos. I remember walking halfway home. We would walk to a certain point in the town where we lived in Dover, and he would walk to, I forget if it was his parents' diner or if he would walk to Victory Gardens or whatever. But he showed me Seventh Son of a Seventh Son for the first time. And I saw that album cover and I said, holy shit. I said, Somewhere in Time is ridiculous, but that Half an Eddy floating above ice and water holding, what is that? Is that a heart? Is he holding, what is that exactly? It was one of these things where, and I'm getting goosebumps describing this right now, but I remember seeing that. And then the advent of MTV's Headbangers Ball. And actually before that, I had seen the album, but I hadn't heard anything off of it. And there's a radio station that no longer exists called WNEW in New York. And on on Fridays, they would have a show called Things from England, which was Scott Muni with Things from England. And this week we have AC/DC with Blow Up Your Video had come out on the same day. And he was playing That's the Way I Want My Rock and Roll, which just from the intro and the hi-hat on that, I was like, wow, this is cool. I have to hear it. Obviously, I'd heard Heatseeker before that, but then up next, the big hit in England. This is Iron Maiden with Can I Play With Magic? And I was like, Iron Maiden? I've never heard Iron Maiden on terrestrial radio in the U.S. before. It was, only Eddie Trunk played this stuff at like 12 o'clock at night or, after 10, if anything. But Iron Maiden was never played. He played Can I Play With Magic? MTV had Banger's Ball, started playing the video for that, started playing the video for The Clairvoyant, started playing the video for The Evil That Men Do. And it was one of these things where I remember back then we would wait around Headbangers Ball just so that we could record a video and we could have that song to just watch over and over again. And it was just like a thing where we would all get together and just watch these videos and like zone out and like see, all these bands that we were into. It was just so cool. But to me, what puts it over is the music in the end. To me, hearing Moonchild, hearing the title track, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and I mean, I played a little snippet of Only the Good Die Young, which is the closing track off of it, which just has some great lyrics to it. I mean, those three tracks for me sell that album. But I mean, this is an album that I put on and I almost always listen start to finish because I just love it so much. I know I'm an oddball with this. I'm sure there are other people that love Seventh Son, but but maybe not to the point that it's their favorite. All right, Mr. Gabriel.
So I thought originally when you asked me the question, which is our favorite three tracks, I didn't realize it meant to be to one album, but I was going in my memory banks trying to choose, and my second favorite song of all time of there is Only the Good Die Young. And it's really the first time I heard that song, which only two of us will know, is at our old lead guitarist's house in Dover. And I remember listening to that song, and it was so melodic and so it just resonated with me. And I just love that song. So that's my second best Iron Maiden song. And then unfortunately, as Victor and I both know, we lost that lead guitarist, and that song means a lot to me because of that situation. Because only the good do die young, and that song will never leave my brain ever in my life.
Yeah, for me, that is the person in question that he's speaking of. I mean, when I'm alluding to watching the videos, we had a band back then and we would all do it together. Another song that Brad brought up, which is Still Life, was his all-time favorite Iron Maiden song. So every time that I hear that song, it always gives me goosebumps. And it, the Still Life is about dying, which is kind of ironic, thinking back at everything that transpired. But difficult to pick. I mean, I'm sure we could all make our own playlist and it would have songs from pretty much every album. Again, I'm probably in the minority here in that I don't like the last album. I affectionately refer to it as Book of Stools instead of Book of Souls. But hey, we all have our own opinions, our own tastes, and there's nothing wrong with people that love that album as well. Brad, you had your hand up before. Do you want to say something as well?
No, I think I just had to go to the bathroom.
Oh, okay. You were asking permission for the hall pass. All right.
He need a hall pass. Yeah.
All right. So, real quickly, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is kind of a thank you to everyone that's on Patreon. There are people that couldn't make it tonight. Mike Jones couldn't make it. Mark Striegel couldn't make it. Chris Vaglio, our newest patron, couldn't make it either. Hopefully in the future we can get everyone together and choose another band to talk about in a similar fashion. what I want to do is kind of thank all you guys for your support with Patreon. And not only that, because, you know, you guys all go above and beyond and retweet and share stuff. And, you know, earlier today, Jeremy was posting about us getting together. Gabriel is showing off the Mars Attacks t-shirt that, you know, it makes you look even more voluptuous than usual. You know, that's a good shade of guitar on you.
I love it. It's a great shirt. I can't tell you how many times I wore it.
Cool. So, hey, everyone helps out in their own way. So when I say it during the shows all the time, I do appreciate you guys. I do 100% appreciate all the support and everything that we do in the group. It is a troll-free environment. It is a great way to share music and talk about stuff that we enjoy. And real quickly, I did want to go around and talk to each and every one of you and see, you know, what from the group or what music from the Patreon group have you been turned on to, or maybe the podcast has turned you on to something that you enjoy as a result of me turning you on to that. So I'm going to start off with Jeremy here.
Yeah, quite a lot, really. I think you know that already, but
yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of great Swedish bands that have been that are out there. I mean, I've bought Arion, I've bought Witherfall, which was a great album as well. I bought the Evergrey album. You know, I've been sort of. I bought the End Machine. There's been one or two others. I mean, there's so much good stuff coming out. It's incredible, really. And if it wasn't for joining up with your Patreon group, I wouldn't have known half of these bands.
Right.
So you know, big thank you to you for posting all this stuff and for having the knowledge, you know, to pass on, because that's what I've really enjoyed. You know, and I've started collecting again, which has been great. You know, I'd sort of had a time when I wasn't doing that. You know, you sort of you know, you with your kids growing up and that sort of stuff, and you know, the music goes in the background a little bit, and then you get back into it again, and it's been fantastic.
Awesome. So I mean, you've rattled off quite a few bands there. It's absolutely cool. You know, Jeremy's one of the more active people in the group, absolutely, and it's funny because there are certain things that I think that are going to be home runs right away, and there are other things that I'm like, there's no way that he'll like this, and it's the opposite. You know, where you'll say, "Oh, I picked up the album. I've listened to their first 3 albums now, and I'm really hooked on them." So, I mean, it's always cool to get that type of feedback. So, I mean, it makes me feel that that it's more than just me posting random videos, that people actually appreciate what I'm actually doing within the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really got me into sort of types of metal that I'd never thought I was going to get into, really into the modern sounding melodic metal, you know, that sort of Arion Evergrey sound, really into that sort of stuff. But, you know, other stuff as well, and you just never know what you're going to like until you're thrown it in your face, and then you go and listen. If you just spend the time listening to the music, and then you decide for yourself, you know, what's good and what's not. It's been great. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's hop on over to Mr. Yarg Metal here. Has there been anything that you've added to Yarg Metal as a result of one or the other, either seeing it in the Patreon group or maybe hearing me talk about it on the show?
All right. Well, first of all, I have to say there are so many great things about what you do, Victor. Okay. And being a patron here, number one, most important thing is the people here. Okay. Really cool dudes. It'd be okay if we had a lady in here. I'm all right with that. I don't have a problem with ladies. But you guys, I feel like I've made friends here, and that is so very cool. We need to get Rob in here, and we need to get Jose in here, and Anyway, that's the most important thing that you've done, Victor. Is you've brought together people from all over the world. Of course, most of them are from New Jersey, but from other parts of the world as well. And it's just a cool thing that you're doing. Okay, you're doing the Lord's work. Okay. Number two, you've cost me a lot of money. All right, and it's not the Patreon thing. It's all the music I've bought because of all the videos that you've shared. I can't even keep up with them anymore. I'm trying to figure out a better way to listen to all this stuff. And then also to try not to buy everything, because I buy everything and then I can't listen to that because I've got so much music. So I'm going to defy everyone to. I wish I was up in my office right now, because then I could pull up Yard Metal and I could look at all the songs that are going to be playing over the next few hours, and I could say, okay, that one's because of Victor, that one's because of Victor, that one's because of Victor, that one's because of Victor. Your fingerprints are all over Yard Metal, whether you know it or not. If we made any money, I'd have to pay you something. But of course, Yard Metal's free, so because we love metal. That's why we're all here, right? We all love metal, and so yeah. Anyway, thank you, Victor. Thank you for what you're doing here.
I appreciate all the kind words, and that totally means a lot to me. It's a thrill to hear that that Yard Metal has a lot of programming as a result. So there you go. Yeah. I have my cousin being peer pressured into joining Patreon by his wife in the chat room. So there you go. Hello, Paula. Hope you're doing well.
Join his wife
join
in
us.
here.
Join us.
Join the dark side.
Yes.
Mr. Hoker.
Yes.
I tender the question to you, sir. Over the years, you've been a longtime follower of what I do from Mars Attacks. I don't know how long you have been following, but you've been pretty constant with your support over the years, and that I definitely appreciate. What have I helped turn you on to music-wise over the years, either from the podcast or from Patreon?
There's countless female-fronted bands that you've brought to my attention, which I'm a sucker for. So I would say probably 8 times out of 10, it's always pretty good and goes into the, into the Amazon Music playlist.
Right.
But as far as the Patreon group, like everyone else is saying, it doesn't even matter what you're posting. We're here for you, and everybody else in this group is awesome. And, it's just a great community. And that's the main thing, and we all appreciate your hard work. And, I first heard of you through Mark on Talking Metal when you were doing the Friday live shows,
right?
Eons ago.
Yeah.
You may have actually still been in New Jersey. I'm not.
No. I started podcasting. It's going to be 12 years next month. And I've been here for almost 18 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the show with Mark, that Friday Night Live show was, I don't even think my kids were born yet. And my oldest is going to be 10 next month as well. So it was quite a long time ago. That show was a lot of fun to do, in that whole thing where I was able to program the station for Mark. And for those that don't know, I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff with Mark. I've done it over the years. He's the guy that kind of got me into podcasting. And from that, we've developed a relationship where I've done, web work for him, and I've done a lot of content creation for him. And I've, been program director on the 2 different stations that he had, basically. And when we did those Friday Night Live shows, I was pretty much the guy running the show and queuing him and John to come in whenever John was on board. It was so much fun to do that. Unfortunately, like everything else, that just it didn't last. We did that for like about 2 years, I believe, if I remember correctly. And
Somewhere around
then
there, so
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Again, I owe a lot to Mark. I mean, I can say that, for example, he got to interview Charlie Benante this week was kind of an envious thing for me because, being able to just bring people up like that at like a moment's notice is definitely something that I wish I could do. But 12 years in, I still have to jump through a lot of fiery hoops. And I understand I'm not Mark, I'm not Eddie Trunk, I'm not, Mitch LaFon or all these big name people. I've become, and I think it has a lot to do with the live stream and the camaraderie that we have. I think I've become a lot more comfortable with just, I am who I am and what I'm doing. I think, enough people appreciate. You can look at the charts in Estonia as proof that I'm cool with where I am. I will say, and I think I may have mentioned this when you were on. I mean, now I'm at the point where every week when I'm releasing episodes, the show is usually within like the top 100, usually around 80 something.
Mm-hmm.
It tails off to like 250 and then it just drops off the chart. But
that was my episode.
No, your episode got up in the 80s as well.
Ooh.
So I wouldn't I wouldn't say that you didn't bring people in. I think a lot of people came in, and I think I've been making the point. I keep saying this. I just want to have good conversations with people, regardless how big of an artist it is, whether it's you guys, whether it's anyone that just wants to talk about music. I think the conversations are what draw people in, and I enjoy doing it. And I enjoy having you guys, usually in the chat, lending your comments and questions and everything. I think that Sumo Psycho episode was great last week, with everyone chiming in and throwing questions in from the chat, and they were cool with all of that, which was great. I just wish I would have spelt the damn lead singer's name right today when I sent all the I posted about the damn interview, but hopefully I won't catch too much crap for that.
Don't worry, I've spelt my own name wrong on here.
Did you? Oh my gosh!
There you go.
You know what?
Spelled
The nice
my
thing,
last name right.
Yeah, the nice thing, Victor, is they're Canadians, so they'll forgive you.
We can hope.
Yeah, they're forgiving people. They're not from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Hey, we're
punch you.
we're usually forgiving. There's usually like an outburst.
Yeah, right after you punch somebody.
Well, you have to get that frustration out, and then you're good with things.
I usually just walk away. I'm like, you're not. I'm like, it's not worth it. I'm out.
It's not worth it. There you go.
Lastly,
the person that's actually known me the longest here with us today, Gabriel. You mentioned Iron Maiden. I'm sure there are a few other bands that I've turned you on to over the years. Any other band come to mind?
When we were kids, Friday nights at your house, your parents' house, was metal trivia night for me. And if I didn't get the questions right, I'd get a smack in the head.
You're not helping the Jersey thing here.
No, it was tough love. I enjoyed it. Believe it or not, I truly enjoyed the Sumo Psycho interview. They were so captive, and they like, it was unbelievable. They were like, so they had this energy that I actually went immediately, started listening to their stuff, and now I have Bystanders stuck in my head. Yeah, and like all week, and it just doesn't leave my head. And so I'm going to say recently that's the song. But I mean, basically, my love for metal honestly comes from Victor. Because we listened to metal since we were, I can't even tell you, we were playing air guitar since we were kids. And but I'll tell you some cool stories about the show. But back to the Patreon real quick. I signed up. I do enjoy, because I live a very hectic lifestyle, and as all my life, Victor has always been the one to say, hey, did you listen to this band? Hey, I'll get a Facebook message. Check these people out. it's right up your alley. Hey, so aside from doing that for the general public, he does that for me as family. And signing up to his Patreon was only natural because I get the emails, I check it out a band, and I love to listen to the bands on there and just check them out and get some information. But I'll tell two quick stories. One story was a handful of years ago, probably now I'm going to say well over 10 years ago, maybe. I was able to score backstage passes to a band, a little local band here called Overkill, which I'm sure most people know in this room. And I was there, and I went up to Bobby Blitz, the lead singer, and said, "Hey, Bobby, I just want to say I heard your interview. You interviewed with my cousin on his show, on his podcast." And he looks at me, and goes, "Who's that? Who's that?" He goes, "Well, I mean, you may not know him or anything like that, but I said, his name is Victor Ruiz." And Bobby stopped. He was signing an autograph actually at that time, and he stopped and he looked at me. He said, "Victor Ruiz?" I said, yeah, he's over in Europe. He was his Jersey guy, but he moved over to Europe, and you interviewed once on his show or a couple times. And he said, yeah, I know Victor Ruiz. I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Oh, that's nice. That's nice." He goes, "Yes, I consider him a personal friend." So that just goes to show Victor's outreach there. And then another story.
Let me cut you off there for a second. Yeah. That's Beat It Kid. Yeah, sure. I know who he is.
Yeah. I'll tell you another story, which is really far-fetched. I teach dentistry down in South Jersey, and it was a small class, and we were at the end of the class. It's a 2-day course. It's 4 times a year, and at the end of the class, one of the nights, the director takes us out for dinner, and there was the director's best friends is a huge music guy, and he started throwing out music trivia, and all stuff was. He asked one of the things was, without looking at your phones, who did Gary Moore play for? And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe I drew a blank because I was in a different environment. I was in a school dentistry mindset, not expecting this guy to spit it out. Well, there was a student next to me from Chicago that got the answer right, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, if my cousin Victor was here, he would smack me in the back of the head because I got that wrong." And he says, Victor, you're from Jersey? Yeah, Victor. He goes, "Oh," I said, he started asking me, he goes, I know Victor. No. And it was like, we just started talking. It turns out that he was a huge fan of the show. He's a huge fan of Victor's show. So far back to know that Victor took a hiatus for a period of time. And actually, he said, "I'm so happy that Victor put his show back on, and I'm so happy that he's back on with Mark." And it was just a weird thing. Like, I'm in the middle of the woods in South Jersey in the Pinelands, and this guy from Chicago who's there learning dentistry happens to be one of Victor's listeners. So I thought that was the coolest thing, and I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm proud of my cousin. I love him, and it's just I'm so happy that I can support him any way I could. So. We've been together for years. We've been through the thick and thin, and even though we haven't seen each other in 10 years, he still busts my balls and I bust his. That's basically how it is.
Just so you guys know, I did pay for a year's worth of bagels before he came on, so that's why I'm getting all the kind
Jersey bagels are the best.
And where do I get that bagel deal?
Well, once you get to the what is it? The 45-year mark. We'll be able to manage that into the membership. You'll get the free
46.
bagel.
That should count.
Yes, but we have to know each other for 45 years.
Oh, all right.
See, you got to look at the asterisks at the bottom.
No, we're still close. We're getting there.
Almost. Yeah. Awesome. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being on here again, not only for supporting me on Patreon, but just coming on here tonight. We will pick another band to dissect their discography, and hopefully we'll do it with enough time to get people to brush up on the band. I have a few different ideas as to who we may discuss, but it'll be, something along the lines of an Iron Maiden, someone that's big enough that we've all listened to. And we will do at some point in the future, we will have to do Twisted Sister just so that,
of course,
so Steve can can throw some knowledge at us. And I will say, the first person that I know to own a Twisted Sister album was Gabriel. So there you go. So there's
Stay hungry.
I knew I liked them.
I still have it. Still got the vinyl.
See, so there
I got
you
my
go.
brother's. He was like, "Here, you like them more than me, so you have this." So I got it autographed.
Yeah, that's
There you
awesome.
Any parting words before we say goodbye? Jeremy, is there anything you want to say before we hang up here?
No, I'm just glad you picked Iron Maiden. Obviously, great British band, but whatever you pick next time would be great. And just keep doing what you're doing, Victor. It's great.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And are you confident for next weekend?
No. It's nail biting.
You've already lost to Chelsea. They knocked you out of
Twice.
the FA Cup, right?
Yeah, we've lost twice, but we didn't have the full team out. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I think you're going to have to come to see Barcelona against Real Sociedad to get your goodbye game between Silva and Sergio Agüero.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually. I hope they come back and say goodbye, because obviously it's been terrible with this this COVID thing. I mean, I've not been to a match since March the 7th. I was at Wembley from the League Cup final on March the 7th last year. So that's the last time I went. Yeah. So as a lifelong fan, it's been a bit of a drag, but fingers crossed. I'm hoping I might be able to get a ticket for the final tomorrow.
Oh wow!
Fingers crossed. Yeah, but
cool.
We'll see.
Hopefully it works out.
Yeah.
Mr. Brad Dahl, and we have two doctors today. We have
all right,
Dr. Poison, and we have the metal dentist. Brad, any parting words before wrapping up the show?
No, I was kind of hoping we were going to get into these discs, but we're going to start a whole nother hour going here. No, just everybody here is just so awesome, and thank you for doing this, Victor, and thank you for letting me be a part of it, even though it cost me money.
Well, maybe we'll have to do the dark side of Maiden in the future.
There you go.
We can touch on X Factor and Virtual 11 and Book of Stools.
Hey, that's actually a pretty good topic, though, is just pick some, just say, let's talk about where bands that are generally liked amongst metal fans kind of went wrong.
Right. Could be an interesting topic.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Let's keep that on the table.
Absolutely. Mr. Hoker, any parting words?
Just be good to each other. That's all.
You're always there with the sage comments and also to lend the comedy as well. So we thank you for your kindness with your parting words.
Thank you.
And the other doctor in the room, any parting words?
I just want to say I'm thankful to be on the show. I appreciate being invited on, and I feel like I have a whole new group of friends. The last couple shows, I don't get to catch some of them. I know some of the shows I catch on my ride home from work, and I just turn it on and listen in the car. And I'm just happy that this is a wonderful community, and I'm actually glad to see two of my cousins on the show as well, or at least chatting. And I don't get to see them often either, so I feel like a nice connection here, and I got all new friends. So I'm looking forward to more. That's all I can ask for.
Awesome. Guys, we are wrapping things up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Again, thanks whether you're listening or watching live or whether you're checking out the replay. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for liking. And we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream, brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast. And as I like to say before the end of the show, see ya. Until next time.